And now we would move to Mr. Scott Marler, Director, Iowa Department of Transportation. Mr. Marler, you're recognized for 5 minutes.
Chair Norton, Chair DeFazio, Ranking Member Davis, Ranking Member Graves, and members of the subcommittee. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to appear today and speak to the important topic of automated transportation. It is my honor to testify on behalf of the American Association of State Highway and Transportation Officials and the Iowa Department of Transportation. My main message is to share the critical importance that connected and automated vehicles, or CAVs, will have on improving the safety, equity, and sustainability of the nation's transportation system. State DOTs are preparing for a future with CAVs and are absolutely dedicated to supporting the safe deployment of a connected, automated, and cooperative vehicle roadway ecosystem where benefits extend across modes and throughout all states. One of the key reasons state DOTs are so interested in CAVs is to improve roadway safety. We've learned that the first 9 months of 2021 were deadly on our nation's roads, where more than 31,700 people died in traffic crashes. In Iowa alone, we lost 354 people to traffic crashes last year. This is entirely unacceptable, as each life lost is one too many. USDOT recently announced the National Roadway Safety Strategy, which includes actions for safer roads and safer vehicles. CAVs hold tremendous potential to reduce crashes and save lives. And I believe that CAV technologies must be an integral part of these strategies in order to fully realize the safety promise they hold. In Iowa, our vision for deploying automated transportation has taken a two-pronged approach, focused on the drivers of today and the CAVs of tomorrow. We have several strategies that promote readiness for a more connected and automated transportation future, including the following: defining our vision and plan, extensive stakeholder engagement through our Automated Transportation Council, new policies and legislation that now enable and support driverless vehicles, and infrastructure improvements that work for human drivers today and the CAVs of tomorrow. Iowa's experience is not unique among the state DOTs. In October 2021, AASHTO adopted 10 CAV policy principles we believe fundamental to the safe and effective deployment of CAVs across our states and nation. I would like to quickly highlight two for you now. First, to fully realize the benefits of automated transportation, AASHTO member states believe that vehicles must be more than automated, they must also be connected. Connected vehicle technology is key to ensuring automated vehicles have the enhanced safety features in place to fully advance our goals of a safe, mobile, equitable, and efficient transportation system. This is a key reason why we continue to strongly support the preservation of the 5.9 gigahertz spectrum. Second, AASHTO believes there is an urgent need for coordinated national strategy, which includes a vision and roadmap for CAV readiness and deployment. The vision and strategy must be developed collaboratively with active input from infrastructure owner-operators, industry, communities, and all levels of government. Because the safety and mobility benefits are potentially enormous, fully realizing them requires clear strategic direction to focus and align our programs and tactics. These are only two of our CAV policy principles at AASHTO, and I encourage you to review all 10 in more detail. I would like to conclude my remarks this morning by bringing emphasis to three critical actions that we believe will lead to the successful deployment of CAV technologies. Number one, develop a national strategy and vision. Congress can foster progress by calling on USDOT and the transportation community at large to articulate a clear vision and national strategy for automated transportation. Number two, continue to foster collaboration and partnerships. USDOT needs to continue fostering partnerships and cross-sector dialogue because collaboration is our competitive advantage. Number three, preserve the needed communication spectrum. Congress can provide much needed certainty by working within their authority to reserve the safety spectrum for transportation. Thank you again for the honor and opportunity to testify today on behalf of AASHTO and the Iowa DOT. I'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions. Thank you.
Tomorrow we're holding a hearing on 5G. the FCC created issues the way it was deployed. But we also saw that the FCC is proposed to selling more than half of the vehicle-to-vehicle communication spectrum. Mr. Marler, you referenced this. I mean, how do you, I mean, can you just comment on how abysmally stupid that is?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to offer a few perspectives from the state DOTs. And to link it to the previous question about infrastructure, we all want good pavement condition. We all think that lane markings and clear signage are very important. These will help drivers today and the CAVs tomorrow. But the digital infrastructure is just as important to enable the future transportation systems. We're talking about communications, we're talking about data standards, we're talking about digital mapping. So with specific regard to connectivity, we believe that the safety promise of the CAVs will be enhanced through connectivity. So preserving the 5.9 gigahertz safety band, this would add certainty, not only for state and local jurisdictions, but also for developers and manufacturers. And we do see that as a key component of any future automated transportation system.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I appreciate it. And my conversation will be with Mr. Marler. And I like the fact that you called out the fact that although our rural areas only hold 19% of our population, it's 68% of our nation's lane miles and 45% of our fatal crashes. And so coming from a rural state, of course, I care a great deal. And I thought Chair DeFazio asked a really good question earlier to one of the other witnesses about the effectiveness of these automated vehicles really depends a lot, autonomous vehicles rather, depends a lot on the quality of the roads. And so you mentioned this automated shuttle service that was operating on all different kinds of rural roads, including gravel and unmarked roads. And so maybe tell us a little bit more about that. Maybe tell us how you would have answered Chair DeFazio's question.
Well, thank you for that question. Rural roads and the operations of autonomous vehicles on rural roads is certainly on the minds of many of our states because many of our populations are rural in nature. And as you pointed out, the rural areas have 45% of all fatalities are on rural roads. So this absolutely is a concern. So one of the things that we focus on in Iowa is our physical infrastructure across the board needs to be in good condition. Better pavements and bridges, our lane markings, our signage, our shoulders. We know that those good stewardship of our physical infrastructure helps to enable automated vehicles of the future. But we're also looking at the digital infrastructure, and that's getting at the demonstration project that you mentioned. The University of Iowa actually received a federal grant to look at the operation of rural shuttle buses in rural parts of Iowa. And these buses are operating on gravel roads and unmarked roads, very rural scenarios in the state of Iowa, because we're trying to make sure that we are able to serve all of our populations across the state. And so one of the things that is very important for this shuttle bus to work is the digital infrastructure, and more specifically, the high definition mapping that's on board. That map is able to digitally paint a center line down a gravel road. And this is very key for the operation of this particular rural shuttle. Now, that's one thing that we're learning, and there are many learnings that we're experiencing, but I would say that there is work yet to do here, and we need to ensure that the benefits are going to be widespread. I'll mention one other thing that'll tie into this directly is the expansion of broadband across our states and across our nation. In Iowa, this has been a very important focus for us, and we just in the last 12 months, as a matter, we've invested $323 million in broadband grants for the private sector to install more broadband.
So as we work on this demonstration project, as the University of Iowa works on this demonstration project, what appears to be the biggest challenge? I mean, logistically, what is going to be the largest hurdle to clear?
Logistically is standards across the board. You know, we're basically this project is helping us understand the data standards that we need, but we're building that through this demonstration project. What are those minimum standards across our nation that we need to look at for data? What are those minimum standards for connectivity? This is one reason we talk about preserving the 5.9 gigahertz space is we need to be able to rely on some of the communication technologies as well as those minimum data standards that make the distribution of the technologies ubiquitous and everywhere in our country.
is the demonstration project, I mean, tell me more about if they're analyzing to what extent, these things are scalable, right? I mean, it's setting aside the broadband, because I think you're right, the digital infrastructure is critically important, but what about all of the other things? I mean, you talk about upgrading the quality of the roads. That is, that's a pretty substantial undertaking as well. Is a demonstration project very scalable?
Well, we think it will be, and keep in mind, we're learning a lot with this, but the reason we think it's scalable is because these lessons that we're learning, we're trying to look at it more from a agnostic point of view with the technology and just saying, what are those basic things that we need in these rural areas? And that's why I mentioned earlier the broadband perspective, is because we know.
So, one more thing quickly, what would come next? Let's say that the demonstration project's a big success. What does phase 2 look like?
So phase 2 is we're trying to understand operationally what we can do as transportation departments to help the situation with rural automation. What can we do from an infrastructure and an investment perspective to set that stage such that it can really, as you say, be scalable and go to the next level? So it's really our operations focus is what comes next as we analyze the data.
My next question is for Mr. Marler. Mr. Marler, there are many public places and public and private stakeholders involved in AV development. Your testimony calls for federal leadership to help direct the conversation surrounding AVs. What role can the federal government play to help facilitate the safe deployment of AVs to meet community needs?
In Iowa, we've convened a public-private multi-sector vision for AVs, and we created a space for this in our state via the Iowa Automated Transportation Council. We've done this regionally in the Midwest among our 10 Midwestern states. And it's our view that we need to replicate these types of engagements at the national level and establish a clear, consistent vision, strategy, and framework. There is sufficient energy across the nation in terms of this conversation. It's been somewhat fragmented. Iowa, we call them silos of excellence. Congress can foster this collaborative environment at all levels of government. We believe that you can convene a new national dialogue and conversation. You can make sure that we're engaging a broad cross-section for input, including local communities, both public and private. And also there are some great collaborative efforts already underway that support is critical for, like the Cooperative Automated Transportation Coalition. So those are some thoughts on how we might meet some community needs.
I appreciate it. This is for yourself and any of the witnesses that may want to answer. A significant number of roadway fatalities occur on rural roads. One of the challenges on the use of connected and automated vehicles is the lack of required infrastructure features to accommodate them in rural parts of our country. What can and should be done to prepare rural America for the expanded use of AVs?
I'd be happy to start with an answer to that question. And thank you for that question. Really two things that we're looking at. First is we do need to look at our physical infrastructure, make sure that we have good condition pavements, our signs, our lane markings, that these things are in good condition in our rural areas especially, but the investment can still be challenging. Our rural areas do struggle to have the available levels of funding to ensure that they're making those stewardship investments that they need. The second thing we can do is really an emphasis on digital infrastructure, really looking at our broadband, particularly in rural areas, looking at our mapping, looking at our connectivity and spectrum. This is why the spectrum question is so critical. These things, these two components, both physical and digital for our rural areas, they really have the opportunity to lift our rural communities across our nation.